Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Tracer Burnout. I'm Dan.
And I'm Roger. And we are filming the first of 2 episodes for today. It's a doubleheader, so we got a big day planned ahead for us. And we also just returned from our annual trip that we take with our very long-running series of friends. And so we just got back from Lake Gaston, North Carolina, which is up on the Virginia border.
They're a pretty diverse group of different services. And we have known many of them since childhood, and others that we picked up along the way.
It's certainly an interesting group, to say the least.
Yeah, we got law enforcement officers, military veterans like ourselves, not all Army, first responders.
Yep.
And will you try to go to a different place every year?
That's right. So next year, stay tuned. We also were able to do a little bit of unwinding and responsibly enjoy a little bit of War Chief bourbon from gifted to us by our friend Ivy from a previous episode. So the McTavish whiskey. It's good stuff.
She asked us to conduct some research on McTavish spirits.
Yes.
And we conducted that research responsibly.
We did indeed.
Yes.
So thank you, Ivy.
Indeed. Thank you very much. It is delicious.
All right.
Okay. Now, podcast update.
Okay.
We are in 22 countries.
Interesting.
And over 200 cities around the world. Now, we are in a lot of the larger media markets like Los Angeles and Atlanta and New York and things like that. But I mean, that's to be expected, right? Those are population centers. But I thought it would be interesting for us to play a little game.
Oh boy.
I am going to list.
Is this like Jigsaw?
It's just the United States edition.
Okay.
Because I would not be able to pronounce many of the international places. I'm sorry.
Kuala Lumpur.
And I am probably going to butcher some of the pronunciations of the local places. But I am going to give you the city, and you tell me which state it is.
Oh, geez. Okay.
All right. Here we go. Athens.
Georgia.
Nope. Alabama. Walled Lake.
Montana.
Michigan. Moyock.
Wisconsin.
North Carolina. Ankeny.
Do I get partial credit if you slaughter the pronunciation?
No, because I'm probably slaughtering most of these.
I do know Moyock, North Carolina, actually. But okay, what was the last one?
Ankeny.
Let's go with Indiana.
Close. Iowa.
Oh, because they're Midwestern states. They're basically the same thing, is that what you're saying?
I mean, they're not that far apart.
Okay.
At least you didn't say California. Port Orchard.
That's going to be on the East Coast. So how about New Hampshire?
So you're not close. Washington State.
That's what I said, West Coast.
You said East Coast. Ass. Willington Hill.
Willington Hill. That sounds super waspy, so I'm going to stick with New Hampshire again on that.
Connecticut.
Okay, yeah.
Walnut Creek.
Oh, Connecticut is even more waspy than New Hampshire is. Okay. Hampshire.
Walnut Creek.
North Carolina.
California.
You know there is a Walnut Creek, North Carolina.
I'm just listing what's here and where we have listeners. So the Walnut Creek, North Carolina people need to be tuned in.
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Now, here's a big bonus for you.
Okay.
You have many options for this one. Westminster.
And this is not in London town,
no.
I presume. Okay. So, or Londonium, depending on how old you are. Also very, very waspy, so I'm going to go with, we'll go with Massachusetts.
No.
It's going to be like Texas or something.
I would have accepted Maryland, California, and Colorado. We have listeners from all of those states in towns called Westminster. So.
Maryland is not waspy.
I mean, it was.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, it was founded by Lord Baltimore.
Who is Catholic.
Yeah.
Wasp is Protestant.
Most people don't make that differentiation.
Okay.
But regardless, you failed miserably. You didn't get a single one correct, and in some cases you were entire coasts off.
Well, you didn't know WASP stood for Protestant. So.
Obviously, I did know that.
Okay.
But, again, we apologize if I butchered the pronunciation of your town. I didn't butcher the name of the state, though.
These are what we call crocodile tears, ladies and gentlemen. Off the top of your head, do you know our country updates? Like what countries?
I
know you're shooting from the hip a little bit.
I can do a quick rundown, but I mean, we've got Spain is actually our most downloaded country outside of the U.S.
Nice.
After that, Russia. We've got the United Kingdom, the Seychelles.
The Seychelles.
Yes.
Somebody who's sitting on a beach.
Israel, Belgium, Denmark, Iceland.
All right, so Europe's holding it down. We got to break out of that.
Well,
though.
Seychelles actually falls under Africa in the categories that are listed for the numbers.
It is indeed.
But yeah, we'll play the international game of where is this town another time.
Let's say
it will take a lot of work for me to be able to pronounce some of the places in Korea.
Fair enough. Annyeonghaseyo.
Yes, that.
Okay, mailbag. Okay, this is a question that probably the question we get the most, usually on social media. Can we or do we have the ability to do virtual sit-down interviews with people? Dan.
Yes, we can. We could easily have that capability of doing it. However, that costs additional funds. It, in my opinion, leads to an inferior product. I mean, it would make things much easier on me, but I think it leads to it's less cozy than when we have the guests here in the studio. So, I mean, can we? Yes. And we will eventually have to do it because obviously the veteran community is worldwide. But we prefer not to do it that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
So.
Okay.
Well, without any further ado, Air Force veteran Dan Cookie Cook.
Stay tuned.
Dan, thanks for being here. We appreciate you taking us up on the offer.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely
pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, sir.
All right, cool.
I've done some interviews and stuff like that for the Air Force, but nothing like this.
For the Department of Justice.
Well, you know, when you guys lured me here
it's true.
to the house, it's from the internet to
Dan's gingerbread house.
I was like,
it was not under false pretenses. It was not.
Is this a pyramid scheme or is it worse? You know.
So let me tell you about Amway.
Okay. Well, we generally get started the same way. So, does your family have a history of service?
They do. Yeah, my granddad on my dad's side was in World War II. He was in the Navy, and he was a gunner, or a gunner's mate, not Navy, so I don't know all that stuff, on a destroyer in the Pacific. So
wow.
It was kind of neat. My wife and I got to go and see an Easter service on one of the ships in Hawaii, and it was kind of thinking about him in his service. So and cool thing there was they're ramping up, about to go to war, and their boat didn't have a chaplain. And so, my granddad was not a pastor or ordained or anything like that, but he, felt like he needed to go, ask and, offer his services to the captain, and said, hey, would you mind? And he wasn't expecting the response, but the captain was like, absolutely. Yeah. And so what I think was their Easter service, everybody came out on the top deck and listened to my granddad speak on John 3:17. So pretty interesting. Yes, pretty interesting, because what comes after is pretty important too. So but yeah.
Anybody else?
So my uncles on my mom's side, they were in the Army, and they did tours in Vietnam. One of my uncles got out, and then one of my uncles, Uncle George, he's a lifer, so and he married a beautiful woman in Germany, and they've got 2 great daughters, and he stayed there for a while. Love Germany. It's such a great, and the people are amazing, but such a great area, like the castles and the Black Forest and stuff like that. So
I completely agree.
yeah,
It is amazing.
and he speaks fluent German. And then he moved back to Charleston, South Carolina, where most of our family's from, and now he's just riding out, living the life. So and then my dad was Air Force. He's a retired master sergeant. He did about 12 to 13 active, and then got out, went down to be a TPD officer, so Tampa Police Department down in Florida, and then he got in the reserves and retired out of the reserves, all security forces. And then my uncle, his brother, is a retired senior master sergeant. He was a chief, but he gave the stripe back, so, which is an interesting story. He told his wife that if he gets over 20, and he was right at 20, and they get another bad assignment, because he went to Iceland, and she didn't like that too much. And they at the time they were in Hawaii, and he got picked up for chief pretty young, and he was going, I think he was going to be a command chief. He's a pretty sharp guy. He's in his 90s now, but really, really sharp guy. And actually, no, late 80s. He went to his commander and slid the stripe back because he was getting orders to go back to Iceland. And my aunt was like, "Oh no, go, it's your dream to be a chief and stuff like that." And he said, "No, I made a promise to you that, and so he's done well. I look at military people and I see, anybody that served, they usually do really well on the outside. I have buddies that are, retired as tech sergeants, and, they're crushing it. It's just what the military instills. I mean, I know there's those one-offs, right, and everything, but what the military instills in us, I think, is really good, and I know it was for me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a pretty well-ranging history of service within your family. Did that influence you to join the service?
So, yes and no. So my mom and dad were split when I was pretty young. So we did a tour in Germany when I was young. And then when we were in Germany, my mom and dad split. So my mom and my sister and I went back to Charleston, South Carolina when I was about 5 years old. And so kind of grew up apart from my dad, which my dad is an awesome guy, but there was just a separation there, and that's tough. And I know there's a lot of people that kind of do that nowadays, but back then it was really taboo to be divorced. And they made it work, but it was hard growing up in the South, and we were poor. And so I looked at the service, I looked at my uncles, absolutely looked at my dad, and my granddad, and I was like, yeah, that's a good option. And my dad actually was like, "Hey, why don't you come down and be part of the TPD?" And I was like, "Oh." And back then, probably now too, they're paying really good money for, basically high school graduates that can meet the physical requirements. And I looked at that and I was like, no, I really want to go to college, because nobody really went to college in my family. So I went to college, and I got picked up for ROTC, and then it was just a way to pay for school, but I knew it was a good option. I knew it was but it wasn't something like, I got to go fly planes. I got to go do this. It was more of, I know that's not bad. So
a couple things. When you started college your freshman year, did you know from go that you were going to enroll in ROTC?
No.
Okay, so I mean, you were a walk-on. Did you start very beginning of freshman year?
No.
Okay.
So I was so just to pay for college. This was my big plan. I went to a technical college. So I went to a technical college in Charleston, and I was going to do the first 2 years at the technical college to, something I could pay for. I was working 3 or 4 jobs at the time, and just trying to pay for school and stuff like that. So, and then I made sure that all of the classes that I took in the technical school were going to transfer to a 4-year degree. In fact, they have it was part of a program. Yeah. So I was really careful about that. I didn't want to waste any money, and then I was going to pay for the 4-year degree. 4-year degrees at major colleges, even back then, were expensive, and so I was like, how am I going to pay for this? And I was getting close to when I needed to transfer. So I saw a 2-year program, ROTC program, there at Charleston Southern University. And I was going to the College of Charleston, and they did a crosstown program. So I spent 1 day a week, I believe it's on Mondays, at CSU. And then, the rest of the time, it was actually pretty laid back. It was pretty cool. I was in pretty good shape. And so the physical requirements weren't that bad. And then it was a couple of classes that night on that Monday. So it was always PT and then a couple classes. And then that was it for the week. And pretty, like with homework and stuff like that, it was pretty low threat.
So ROTC, you eventually get offered the scholarship.
Right.
You are doing the 2-year as opposed to the 4-year program. Did you know what you wanted to do in the Air Force at the moment, or at that point were you just kind of taking it a day at a time, right?
Day at a time.
Okay.
Sweet Jesus. Like it was
take the wheel.
Yeah, take the wheel. So yeah, I just wanted to get a college degree. And so this door opened. In fact, I was walking out of a study session in the tech school in the library, and on the bulletin board in front of me was an ad for ROTC. So, there wasn't social media and all that stuff back then.
What year is this?
This was, 90...
let's say mid-90s, is that? Or maybe early to mid-90s?
93, yeah. I believe. Yeah, so... graduated high school in 91, so I believe it was around 93, getting done with that second year of Trident Tech. And then saw the number, called the number that night. As soon as this major was staying late, and he was still there, and talked to him. He was a believer, so that, my faith is a really important thing. And, they were really looking to fill their slots because they have a certain amount of slots they needed to fill. And quite honestly, they were very aggressive to get me in. And everything they said were checking boxes for me. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I took the AFOQT, and I surprisingly, because I was not a great student back then,
that's a placement test of some sort?
Air Force Officer Qualifying Test.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
No acronyms, right?
No, you can absolutely use
I knew AF was Air Force, and then you lost me after that.
So surprisingly, I did very well on that, and got in. So, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Good. So, I don't want to get too far ahead of you, but...
Sure.
You're trying to get your degree. You're taking it a day at a time. When you're talking to this major, we'll call him recruiter, when you're talking to him, what kind of pitch is he making to you as far as what prospects you might have on the other side of commissioning?
He didn't really talk about jobs as much as he talked about what the Air Force believed in.
Okay.
And our core values are integrity, service, and excellence. So pretty, when you look across the DoD, our core values are pretty close to the same.
Yeah, sure.
I like the Air Forces, obviously, because they're simple. There's 3 of them. I can remember them really easy. I look at the Marines and they've got this long,
The Army's like that too.
And the Armies, I'm like, oh, please, guys, let's package this a little bit differently. But integrity first, that's always important. Service before self, and then excellence in all we do. So integrity, service, excellence. And he started talking about that, and quite honestly, he was like, he picked up that I was a believer, and he's like, this lines up with the Bible. And I was like, yeah,
it does.
All of this, service before self, and it was really just awesome. And then he was like, and we'll give you money for school, and we'll give you a stipend monthly. And I'm like, wow. Because, I'm working really hard just to pay for Trident Tech. And
you said
wasn't that.
Yeah, you said you had 3-4 jobs.
3 to 4 jobs, because, nobody wants a full-time worker, unless you're actually, especially the kinds of jobs that, 18 to 20-year-olds get.
Yeah, so being paid to be a part of this program was a huge thing for you. Yeah.
So, I was like, yeah, this is really cool. And how do I have, what can I do? He did talk about, different things, but he didn't want to, I don't think I felt like he was an honest broker. Like he didn't want to say, yeah, you can go fly. And then the AFOQT I bomb on, and I can't even get you in. So thankfully I did really well in AFOQT, and I qualified to fly. So it was pretty cool.
So up to that point, was flying something that you had ever even thought about?
No.
It was a door that was kicked open, right?
Yeah, it just, it was one of those things. I had never flown on a plane except for once when I went to go see my dad on a summer visit. And that was the first time I'd ever flown. And I think since then I hadn't. So I might have flown on an aircraft just one time by that point.
For the qualifying test,
do
they tell you, or based on your score, do they give you a list of the positions that you qualify for?
Once you take the FOQT and you get your score, then they can have that conversation of
sure.
And if they can push you to the flyers, but what they need to do is they need to push towards the needs of the Air Force.
Of course.
And so,
do you remember some of the other jobs that you qualified for?
Not really.
Okay.
I think so. Flying is like the highest, so you can do everything else. If you can fly, besides medical or if it needs
JAGs and medical and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you need a degree that's specific to that job, then you have to be in that pipeline. But other than that, and I didn't qualify to be a pilot. I qualified to be what they call a navigator at the time, which is combat system officer or operator now. CISOs. So they're like, we can't put you in for pilot, but we can put you in for navigator. I was like, what's a navigator?
You sit next to the pilot.
You tell the pilot what to do. I like telling people what to do.
Okay.
That would be fun. But yeah, so and then going through nav school, I commissioned in 96 and going through nav school down in Pensacola. I was like, I don't really want to sit behind people and do this. I want to be, more in charge of things. I don't know. I didn't want to be the second fiddle or third fiddle, which, there's, some of that. I wanted to actually make a difference and do stuff. So there were low level with airdrop. There was jobs talked about, in nav school, like, hey, I'm going to go do this. People that had dreamt about being a pilot or a navigator their whole life. They could tell you probably every tail number that is in the Air Force at the time, and they were getting into this. This is something that they researched with their dads, and this is, a lot of them had their private pilot's license and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, I have flown an aircraft one time and, I can barely spell Air Force, so, this is interesting. And, they're talking about ailerons and, and they're looking in, because, in flight training, you actually look at the engine and you got to know the parts of the engine. And, there's a lot of things that you have to know, all the systems. And they're like, just get into it. They're geeking out, and I'm like, yeah,
the shiny thing
looks
that's a wheel.
That's a wheel. Oh, a stick actuator.
That's a wing.
That's a pilot. Yeah, and that looks like an oil filter, and just and at the time we're flying T-34s, which Charlies, which basically looks like a World War II, fighter. You slide the glass.
It's not a Soviet tank, Dan. That's something totally different.
Totally different. It was like a tank, but you'd have to bail out of it. There's no ejection seat or anything like that, and there's all these safety things. I really did enjoy the physicality of it, though. Down in Pensacola, if you've seen, what is it, An Officer and a Gentleman? Mm-hmm. So all of that is actually real. The dunker and the obstacle course and sand and stuff like that. That stuff was really cool to do. And, it's timed events and you have to run your mile and a half and in the sand. And this old Marine that was going through, he was like in his 30s, but for us, he was like, dude, he was everything. And he was coming back through, got picked up to be a pilot, and they had all the navs and pilots together at the time doing the physical stuff at the front. And he taught us how to run through the sand, like to duck walk through the sand, because we were all getting so tired and our times were just like terrible. But
that's definitely a Marine task. Running in sand.
Oorah. But that was kind of like my first indoctrination of how, as military people, it's really a team. It's seamless. Hey, you need to do this. Whether if you're on the firing range, with your weapon, and you haven't, fired or had an M9 very long. People coming alongside and really teaching you how to do stuff, and the training was awesome. I really got into it. I think it started me down the road of PTSD and being not liking tight spaces, though, because when they dunk you underwater,
because you did all your SEER training.
SEER training was crazy with that.
Is that at Pensacola?
So the SEER training that I went to, like the water survival part, is at Pensacola, but for the Air Force, it's up at Fairchild, or was at Fairchild in Washington State. So
we've discussed that on a previous show.
Yes, Miss Alicia Judd. She was an in-flight refueler.
Oh,
so
boom operator.
She had
or pilot.
She had a fun time at SEER school.
She's vertically challenged, and she had some issues in the snow drifts,
and a rabbit named Stewie.
Did she eat the rabbit? Yeah, that's one of those things where that was a new thing for me too, because I didn't, even though I was down south, I didn't grow up hunting. So going through Syria and killing a rabbit, and it's a rabbit they bought. So from the store. And Pito probably would be really not good with that. But we simulated that we caught it, and then we killed it and gutted it and fixed it up to eat, which is not really something we would do in survival, but they wanted you to at least experience that. So that was new to me as well. A lot of great new things throughout my career, actually.
Well, stepping back just a little bit.
Yeah.
So as you're going through the ROTC program, and you get to the point where that you're gonna commission and you're gonna go into the Air Force, at least for a few years. Before you went off to your training, whether it was in Pensacola or, SEER School in Washington. Did you have any sort of expectations of, okay, I'm going to this school to learn this, and then actually achieving those expectations? Or were you just going in like, I don't know what's about to happen?
Yeah, it was, I'm not sure. There were call it gouge, right? There were people that did know. There were people that, researched this stuff, had fathers or mothers that went through, and they were in touch or had the military community around them. Since my dad was security forces and we weren't really together, and most of his time was that while I was around, a little bit of active duty, but most of it was reserve time. I didn't really have that connection, so I didn't get the gouge except through my buddies. So I started picking up pieces, and it was just like, Hogan's Heroes and, Stalag. You're like, hey, did you hear about this? Oh yeah. And so, you cooperate to graduate in a lot of ways. And
but you didn't really have any expectations going into it.
I think it was, I was on high alert. I was ready for anything because I didn't know. I didn't, it was all so new to me, and it was, my eyes were wide open, and I was ready to do anything. So if they said, jump off this 10-meter tower into the water across I was like, let's do it, and that turns out that's the exact right attitude to have when you go into these military situations or in life. Bring it, and we'll figure it out. The answer is always yes, and just figure out how to, get it done and try your best, so no expectations, and just trying to crush it. So,
did you already know what your airframe was going to be?
No, you don't get that. They call it select night, and they call it probably a lot of things, but you, depending on where you finish in your class, you can select a certain amount. It's always needs of the Air Force, right? So, like for the fighter track, if they have a lot of F-16s dropping down and your number one guy or gal wants F-35s, well, too bad.
Sounds familiar.
Maybe you'll get the F-35 on your next assignment, which is always a possibility. But they just try to spread the talent around, and so but I think for the most part, the top 1, 2, 3 people get their first look. So for the heavy side, I was fortunate enough to be close to the top, so I got my number one pick. So I went 141s, but that was at the end of training. So that was, you start out at Pensacola. Back then, you started out in Pensacola, and then you ended up at Randolph in Texas. So San Antonio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 141s are what?
They're the Star Lifter. They were the long, skinny Army airdrop cargo mover. They were the C-17 of their time. Mm-hmm. They had overpowered engines. That's one of the reasons why they call them Star Lifters. They could go straight up. You never had to worry about power in those engines, no matter how heavy you were. But they were single cargo lanes, basically, so you could only take one pallet all the way up, so you didn't have a lot of space compared to the C-17 and the C-5, but they were one of the bigger ones. So you could look at the small tactical airlift as a C-130 with 5 to 6 pallets, and then the C-141 had about 9 to 10 pallets, and then the C-17, the C-5, which
they're just enormous.
Yeah, yep. They do a lot. So
they say you can jump out of C-141s. I don't recommend it.
C-141s were not as bad as the C-17. So the C-17 had to go to T-10 deltas, and they had to extend the ripcord.
It's the static line extension.
Yeah, the static line. Thank you. I was too smart to actually jump out of the aircraft. I stayed in the aircraft.
Not me.
No, I'm just kidding. So because the C-17 with the Charlies and the yellow static lines instead of the blue static lines, which were longer, would whip the jumpers right underneath the C-17, and they would hit the C-17, which is really bad. So
that's bad.
They started extending those, and the 141 was not a bad ride for soldiers in airborne, except when you went low level. Low level, it was called the tube of pain.
This is what I was referring to.
Because, in the back it's dark, it's hot, the AC is not kicking, and you are moving up and down, and in the south in the summer, the heat coming off the vegetation creates turbulence, and so it's not fun in the back. Just to see what our Army brothers and sisters were going through. I rode in the back one time, and I kept everything down, but it was tough and watching everything. But I also got to see a lot of cool things during the jump. Yeah. This one guy was not going to jump, and the jump master was like, "You are going to jump."
We call that a jump refusal. Yes.
He put a boot in that guy.
And you get the boot.
And I was like, "Is that legal?"
He had a vigorous exit. No, that jump master was preventing him from having to undergo an Article 15. So it was in his best interest.
It was his best interest. He was helping him out.
Right.
Whether he liked it or not.
Helped him out of the aircraft. So, but yeah.
Yeah, it can get hot in the back there, and you're right. And it can be quite the relief when the loadmaster finally lifts those paratroop doors and you finally get that air coming in. It doesn't even matter if it's cool air or not, but just it can be stifling.
So as part of the C-141 community, it was pretty cool. I was coming in not too long after we lost a 141 out in just off of Africa, and that was with our sister squadron, and so they had a big memorial over there and stuff like that. So just a great reminder that this is a really dangerous business that we do as a young airman coming out of nav school and being part of the Rig AF instead of training. So I spent a couple of years there in McGuire, and that's in New Jersey. And then I moved down I got lucky enough to get picked up by the Special Operations low-level gang down in the C5 at Dover Air Force Base. And part of the 141, I loved airdrop. Low level, I mean, as a navigator, you're working directly with the
Pathfinders.
Yeah, well, I was sitting J Alert at the time in the 141. So it was single ship, basically had a 141, and me and the pilot, the lead pilot, basically were working, doing everything. I'd make the charts, and we made the plan together. And it was just a great working relationship. And then, you go on these, missions all around the world to drop people and drop things, and it's pretty cool. Figuring out where you need to drop the air, the tank. We drop these huge things, so it hits the bullseye. It's an amazing game. I have to be on the right altitude, right airspeed, right angle. I have to think about the wind and where the aircraft is positioned and how it's positioned. Is it where's the nose, because it's a crosswind or what have you, and there's all these calculations that go into it. And this old nav, when I was going through training at Altus and doing the airdrop there, because you have to get airdrop qualified at Altus before you go to your unit. And he's like, it's a game of the gods. He's like, he was convinced. But it was lots of fun. And so doing that kind of stuff is really what I wanted to do. The airland stuff, being a navigator is, you got a GPS. It's point to point. You get to go to a lot of cool places. You get to work on your airmanship a little bit, make the calls around, when you're going across the pond, which we affectionately, refer to, but that's the ocean.
Yeah. It's just not an actual pond, Dan.
No, I know.
Okay.
I know.
And so you get up there and you make all these point-to-point calls, and you get to, really work on your navigation skills and stuff like that, but it's boring. It's just hours and hours at altitude, and you're like, oh, I want to be low and, getting after it and kicking out some really cool people like the SEALs and, Green Beret, Airborne. I've got to work with some really cool people, combat controllers, that jump out of aircraft. And so, yeah.
Obviously, if you're dropping a tank, you're going to know that you're dropping a tank.
Yeah, it's
right?
dangerous.
But pallets are often full of all sorts of different type of cargo. Did you know what was... Did you know every single time you took off, what was on your cargo manifest?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think you would have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then my follow-up to that is, what is the strangest thing you dropped and where? Because did you ever look at the manifest and we're carrying this?
A pallet of Johnny Walker Red Label.
Right, and what was the strangest thing that you ever saw on your manifest that you dropped somewhere?
All right, so not dropped, but when I eventually got to the 130 and I was flying routes in Iraq, this is the crazy part. So, and there's a reason why we do this, so I don't want it to sound like I'm calling out, our processes or anything like that, but we have to have cargo on our different flights, and we have to show that. And it's when you look at the Combined Air Operations Center, which I worked at for a little while, there's these stereo routes that we need to have for the Army to support the Army, because the Army will need to move. And if we're not in the system flying, it's like the bus, right? The bus needs to continue to run, because you don't know, sometimes they'll pick up one person, sometimes they'll pick up nobody, and the bus will be empty and unfilled. But for us, and on the Air Force side, we needed to show that we were moving pallets. So no kidding, sometimes we would put on this pallet that was the same pallet that we had of water or toilet paper that we had moved probably 10 to 15 times.
Just to show that you were moving something.
And some people would say that's a waste of taxpayer dollars, but it is a process, and there's a reason why we have that airlift available, because you just never know when an Army unit or a Marine unit or an Air Force unit will need that airlift. And if we're not already in the system, but when I was flying,
it's
I really didn't. When I was flying, I really did not understand it. But the Army was paying for us to fly those missions. But it just looks really bad when you fly empty, completely empty. So they didn't really want us to do that. So we would we'd put initials on, the pallets themselves. And we flew that one yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And, and the other side of that, the argument would be, well, we're putting ourselves in harm's way. We're putting crew in harm's way. And that was the thing that, as a flyer, I was like, because, you vote where you sit kind of thing. But, I knew there was a bigger purpose to it, and working in the AOC, I saw there is a bigger purpose, and it's a process, and the Army's actually paying for us to fly those missions, whether we're empty or not, just to make sure that they have the airlift and that's probably an oversimplification of the whole process, but I think that would be the one that would be very interesting. But in the airdrop scenarios, we picked up a unit at Dam Neck in Virginia which is where the SEALs train. And so
down near Little Creek.
Little Creek,
Yep.
right? And it was kind of interesting. It was eye-opening for a younger navigator and airman to see this. And we were going to go do a high-altitude drop with these folks. And that whole trip, it was like a 3-day trip. We were going to go in, fly a low level, pop up, and to the higher altitude, let them jump out. They were going to land and kick all their stuff off because they were operating out of, I think it was New Mexico. And they were going to do like some camping and other things.
Yes.
You know, to get after some training, some much needed training before they did a rotation. And then we were just staying at a hotel while they were getting after it. And then 2 days later, we were going to fly them back, you know. And some of the gear that they put on, the special operators have some really cool gear. Like, it is so awesome. They have, like, you know, four-wheelers that don't run on gas, or at least they did, you know, and they go to 0 to 60 in like no time at all. Yep. And just watching them come on and off and stuff like that is pretty cool. So airdropping those folks for that specific mission was pretty awesome. And that was one of the first times I had got to work with the special ops, and I got to sit up, you know, on the flight over before we dropped into the low level environment. I got to sit up there with an old Navy chief who, you know, been a SEAL, you know, his whole career, and just listening to him talk was amazing. You know, the things that he did and stuff like that. So, and then seeing the young kids behind, you know, that were on his team, that, you know, he was kind of, you know, it was kind of weird. It's like a stark difference between the old Master Chief and then the young guy coming in. You know, the young guy had all this hair and stuff like that, and he was just taking naps everywhere because, you know, you sleep when you can, kind of thing. And then the old chief was like, had no hair, you know, and just a different, you know, era of, you know, of sailor, you know, and it was interesting to see. But then they shot wild game while they were there. They went in, and the professionalism, like, I just started to like really get, like, I need to up my game, you know. I saw these professionals taking things to the next level on every little thing they did, just the discipline they had in their lives. And so they shot this wild game. They basically went in to the senior NCO that ran the chow hall, or DFAC, and said, hey, can we borrow your kitchen for a couple hours? So they brought their game in. They gutted it, skinned it, chopped it up, and basically destroyed the kitchen with all the blood and guts and stuff like that. And then they packaged up the meat and stuff like that. And then they cleaned it better than it's ever been cleaned before. And the senior NCO was like telling our aircraft commander how amazing these guys were and how they were so professional. And I didn't actually get to see it, but I heard about it from, you know, as the senior NCO was talking to my boss at the time, the aircraft commander. And, you know, just seeing that professionalism, seeing them jump out of the aircraft off of the high altitude release point that I, you know, calculated and stuff like that, working with those guys was really, really cool. So
what year was that?
So that was right after I got, so probably 98. Yeah,
this
it was
is
before
pre 9/11.
Yeah,
we're trying to get on the timeline here.
You were still very early on in your career at that point.
Very early. Yeah. I was a first lieutenant.
Okay. So at what point did you think, I'm going to make a career out of this?
You know what? I never said that. So
same.
and I never said I'm going to make a career out of it. In fact, I kind of cringe when I hear the word career, because it's a service. If you're not in it for the person beside you and for serving your country, you're in it for the wrong reasons. I've seen guys like that still make it, and go 20 plus, but the people, and that's not a bad thing. If you're in for a career, we need people like that. If you're in to get a skill set, and do 4 or 6 years and then punch, great. I personally, my little plug would be, hey, why don't you go to the Guard or Reserve too and just keep that time ticking? By the way, I winked at you there. So when you're editing,
I caught it.
He promised he would do it, and he made good on his promise. So.
I caught it.
So I humbly, I would ask that anybody, that's doing that would actually use the skill set that they built up for the last 4 to 6 years and use it in the Guard Reserve. Those Guard Reserve are awesome. Those people, those teammates are awesome, and they need good people. And if you're just looking for a career and just trying to get a retirement, that's a great option to continue your service. But for me, long way to answer your short question, it was just really just I loved what I did and who I did it with, and
Well, I mean, that's everything.
Yeah. And the service was so, and I think that's, as I transition, I think that's the thing I'm struggling with the most. Like, how can I have that passion that I had serving my country outside? And I'm kind of, I'll figure that out. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But for me, it was never. I didn't think I was going to make captain, so I had no clue that I'd finally make 06. Everything past captain was gravy. It was just amazing. I was loving what I was doing, and I was loving who I was doing it with. And then going up and learning how to be a really good navigator, a really good airman. And then September 11th happened right after I moved to Dover and was part of the SOL 2. And I remember exactly where I was, like most people.
You were pretty close to, geographically speaking, you were pretty close to New York City.
Yeah.
So how did your unit react to it?
Well, since we were part of the special operations low level, we were figuring that our guys were going to go out first and do some stuff. So we were on high alert. We were expecting, and I went from J alert, sitting J alert, which is Joint Chiefs of Staff alert, down to doing D alert, which is Department of Defense alert.
DOD,
yeah. So I was on D alert, and we're doing, it was pretty regular that we would sit alert. So the posture didn't change. The expectation changed. We just felt like we were about to go. And we did, but we did it in a much different way than I was expecting.
Okay. Well, what were you expecting, and then what actually happened?
I was expecting to do my low-level job and drop snake eaters out to go take care of some terrorists. But instead, I deployed to Incirlik, Turkey to run a C-17 stage. Plans change when, ride a boom. So, when you get after it, you have to do what makes sense so we can win. And so, we were working with a lot of 3-letter agencies to make sure that we were getting after, the threat, and our C-17s, and I was the stage manager. So we were pushing C-17s downrange with crews that never flew TAC before. There were very few at the time, because the C-17 was still, kind of a newer airframe at that time. And the crews, while they were really great at low levels and, white light type of things, really the C-17 Sol 2 community was starting to step up, and you didn't have a lot of C-17, especially traditional C-17s that started in C-17s, with that, the NVG wearing and doing some of the things that they need to do. So they needed to get trained quickly on things. And so, a lot of the C-17, the older folks that went in that had the NVG training, the 141 Sol 2 folks, the C5 Sol 2 folks that cross-trained in the C-17s, they were teaching their crews pretty quick on how to transition from white light and do some of the missions that needed to be done. But I had to sit in a desk and push crews out as opposed to go be a part of the crew, which hurt a little bit every time.
Was that just because it was that part of your career? Like you had to do some staff time, or you had to do some desk time?
Junior captain.
Yeah.
Junior captain, and
so that was really just that's what portion of your timeline you were on.
So yes and no. So a lot of it was just the needs of the mission.
Somebody has to do it, and we choose you.
Exactly. They weren't using navigators to go and do things. They weren't. C-17s don't have navigators, or they probably would want. There were some navigators that were especially trained to jump on with the C-17 and just kind of, be safety observers. And I did that a little bit later on in the war. So, but it was not planned. It was not a development opportunity. It was just like, hey, 9/11 just happened. Let's go get them. And we need somebody with your expertise that can talk aviation and push these C-17s downrange and make sure when they get back they have everything they need, and you can set the crews up for success by making sure they get in crew rest and they have their plans and stuff like that. Everything that a navigator would do for a crew that they're flying with, we were kind of doing for them. So all they had to do was walk in, grab a package, and get an intel brief and go. Yeah.
Everybody's got their part to play, right? Sometimes it's not glorious, but everybody's got a part to play.
Right.
So how long were you in Incirlik?
So that was only like 4 months, which to me seemed like forever. The longest I had been away.
Long days.
Long days, which actually were very fulfilling, even though I wasn't flying. But my wife was very pregnant, and her granddad was on his deathbed, and my unit did a really bad job of supporting me getting out the door. One person in particular, really, and unfortunately that person was my DO. And they made it very hard. Even though I was gung-ho, people would have to, pretty much my whole career, and this is not me patting myself on the back, this is just kind of my attitude going into the job. People would have to hold me back, like, no, Cookie, don't go. Let's get this straightened out, because I'd rather just go do, because we're serving our country. This is the defense of our country, so this is important. And so I was gung-ho, ready to go, and it was sorry about that.
No worries.
It was tough getting out there because Melissa was about to have our third child, and I didn't know if I was going to get back in time, and then her granddad did pass away, and so for me that was really, really hard to watch her go through that from thousands of miles away. So and that was a theme for the Cook family for the next really the whole career, if you will. So
right after, this wouldn't have necessarily been in your purview, but right after 9/11, I imagine there was high stress involved at Incirlik based off of some of the items that we have contained there. So that wouldn't have been part of your purview per se, is the C-17. Dispatcher, is that a fair way to characterize that?
So it's a little bit more than that. It's like we were in control of that stage. We were in control of the crews, who flew, who didn't fly, their orders, the intel brief, everything kind of fell under the stage. And as a stage manager, you were making sure that, like, when the missions came down from the AOC, that you were lining up those people. You're managing crews and their crew rest. So if you can't have people bust their crew rest, if one of the guys or gals goes to NIF, you got to, duties not including flying, they get sick, they get hurt, you got to take them out. Usually that, depending on who it was, it might take the whole crew out. And then so the other crews had to fly more, and you have to figure that out. You have to figure out how you could get them to fly.
Are they telling y'all what's going on the ground in Afghanistan? Right?
Yeah, so we knew.
Yeah,
we were,
Okay.
Yeah, so those three-letter organizations had things that they needed to do. At the time, it was our C-17 that picked up some people and brought them back, and we had to make sure that the aircraft was configured properly for all that stuff. So there's a lot to do. So you still felt like you were really an integral part of the mission. You just weren't pulling at the controls and actually flying the mission. So,
okay.
Let's take one quick break and then we'll come back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So, after your time at Incirlik is done, then what? Back to Dover?
Yeah, so went TDY from Dover, or deployed, came back, and we were just kind of a young military family with 3 young kids, and I said that wrong earlier. We were actually about to have our 4th kid. She was pregnant with our 4th kid, and then so came back in time to see our youngest born, and
so you made it.
I made it to all of their births, so that was pretty amazing. But that was tough for us, because like I said, 2 weeks has been the longest we'd been apart, and we had no idea. In fact, one of the reasons why I didn't go pilot training from the 141, because as the 141 started downsizing, as we, starting to go to the boneyard, and we're getting rid of the crews, a lot of the navigators decided to go to pilot training. They applied for pilot training. And so I talked to my mentors. That's one thing that, not being the most intelligent person in the room ever, you lean on your strengths of other people, and I always seek advice. So I asked people, and I had some pretty great mentors throughout my time in the Air Force and service. But we had some at the 6th Airlift Squadron that I was part of with the 141s, and they were like, I was thinking about going combat controller. Like I said before, I didn't know about all these jobs. And then working with combat controllers, I was like, these guys are awesome. Let me go CCT. And I heard that they needed officers, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I talked to this one guy, and he's like, they called him Mouse. He was a little small guy. Like, I think he was 5'4", 5'5", like tiny guy, but like all stud. I mean, and had this cool little mustache, and so his call sign was Mouse. And we're having an adult beverage, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about going combat controller. And this is before September 11th.
Okay.
Right? So just prequel, and he's like, well, do you have kids? And I'm like, yeah, I've got kids. He goes, do you want to see them? I'm like, well, yeah. He goes, and this is the honesty you get at the bar kind of thing, I guess. And he goes, are you married? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you want to stay married? I was like, and I didn't know if this was a test or
is he joking? I don't know.
Is he joking? But he was deadpan for sure. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, why don't you just stay doing what you're doing? I was like, okay. And that was before September 11th. Looking to go pilot training. A lot of my buds were going pilot training. I was like, yeah, I'll go pilot training. And there's an opportunity to go to Sol 2, C5 Sol 2, which historically was really, really good for navigators. And my DO was a navigator, and he's like, you don't want to go pilot training. Like, our guys are gone like almost, 180 days a year. Back then, 180 days, that's like half the year. What are you talking about? Anywhere from 120 to 180, the new co-pilots, because they just have to fly. They've got to build up hours. And a lot of my buds were the co-pilots too. And they're like, man, Cookie, dude, like, this is wreaking havoc on my personal life, And I was like, let me go down and do Sol 2 and keep the family together. And so went down there not knowing September 11th was going to happen right after I got there. And then I was going to be deployed. So fast forward, hindsight being 2020, the guys that went pilot training were actually deploying a lot less than I was.
Yeah.
And
oops.
Yeah, whoops.
The irony.
Yeah, so being a young family and just putting that all on my wife to, basically do everything.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Was tough. And so, yeah. But went back to Dover, then got picked up to go down to the 130 and do a special program for that. And that was pretty cool. Thought I would not, that would be good for my family. And that was here at Pope. So got back to the Carolinas, which I thought would be awesome.
What was the special 130 program? I guess what was the intent behind it?
Well, that was kind of like your question earlier. That was a development program. So
okay.
it was basically they would take officers from one type of airlift, and then if you're a pilot or some navigators, you would go to air refueling, from airlift to air refueling, and the idea was to build MAF officers, Mobility Air Force officers that had experience in air refueling.
Cross-training.
And yeah, it was cross-training, but it was a board, and you have to, get picked up for it, and they would review packages and stuff like that. So it's kind of like the first big step to say, okay, this person is, got what it takes to go to the next level. Increasing
the versatility of the force.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, though, it was just going from strategic airlift, which is, the 141 and C5, more to the tactical airlift. So that was the broadening that I was experiencing. And I got to talk to one of the board members about it, and they specifically said, because there were some staff positions you could go to off the board, and they were like, well, we need you to fly more, get, more of that underneath you. Because at the time, I had been deploying as a staff person, and, not getting the combat hours. In the 130, I was going to get a lot of combat hours.
Careful what you wish for.
Exactly. So went down to Pope. Everybody has to go to Little Rock for training, whether you're a pilot or nav, and you're coming over, even though, I was an evaluator in the C5. I did very well there, because I basically knew I just was going a little bit slower than I normally was used to. So did pretty well out of that, and came to Pope and immediately leadership position as a flight commander, and having folks underneath me. And that was the first time I actually had people underneath me, and I was writing their fit reports. I guess that's what the Army calls them. But their annual reports, I would write them and just develop them. I was like the first level supervisor, so that was pretty cool. Because as an officer in the flying world, in the Air Force, you don't have a lot of people that you supervise. So
right.
that's
So
the first chance.
At this point, you'd been in for about a decade.
So I came in '96, cross-trained in 2000 to the C5, and then '04, so right at a decade. So
wow.
I was going to pin on, I basically got a really good push out of Dover. Didn't know it yet, but I had already made '04.
So you were in for a decade before you had any subordinates.
Yeah. Well, real
that would have been
subordinates.
a brilliant first 10 years of my career.
Yeah. yeah, exactly. And that's the interesting part of the Air Force economy.
So that's fairly common? Or in your field
flyers.
Anyway? Yeah.
Absolutely, for flyers.
Yeah. Okay.
Some people come in right away and they have people under them. If you're in services or support, you're probably going to have, as a second lieutenant, you're going to have, maybe 100 or 200 people underneath you.
But in your field,
a maintenance unit. As a flyer, you learn how to fly. And it's trying to get really
focused.
good at that. Yeah. Yeah. And by that time, that was my third platform. So, a lot of airdrop and low levels, which thankfully remains the same. The faces changed, the jerseys stayed, or the jerseys changed, the faces stayed the same. So a lot of the stuff that I learned in training and in flying missions for the 141 and C5 translated well to the 130. So just focused on building people and got a lot of great opportunities to do that.
Cool.
We skipped something very important. Your call sign.
Yeah, so that was back in nav training. A buddy of mine, he had a really interesting call sign, Chewy. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. But it was from his last name. My last name's Cook, right? So we're real creative in the MAF world about our call signs. Not. My buddy, and this was before the internet, you could just look things up and stuff like that. Down in Pensacola, there's this company called Cook's Pest Control. And they had this little jingle on their commercials that was really annoying. It was like, looky, 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 here comes Cookie, Cook's Pest Control.
And you remember it all these years later.
Never forget it. And so my buddy, he had to have stayed up all night just to catch it on the recording. And, the old VHSs and stuff like that. And so we're in the middle of class. And we're about to take a break for the, between, there's 10-minute break, flight training, very serious stuff. It's the Navy, they take attendance. We don't take attendance in the Air Force. No, I'm just kidding. So
he's half joking.
What? No cable? Anyways, I see a TV. They roll a TV in. Like the old
AV cart,
TV with
it's got the tie downs and, the VCR
and the VCR.
Everything's bolted to it.
Everything's bolted to it or strapped down. Loadmasters would be proud.
That's good.
And rolls in, and they're like, the instructor's like, "Hey, one of your students has a special announcement. The instructors are going to leave." And the instructors left. And then they said, after the special announcement, you can go on break. And we're sitting there like, oh no, what's going on?
Happening?
And so my buddy gets up and he's like, hey, we're just going to do a real quick naming ceremony. I'm like, what? Naming ceremony? I don't think he knew half of what he was saying. And and he pops in this videotape and he plays it. And it goes, looky, 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 here comes Cookie's pest control. And he goes, Cookie. And he points right at me, Cookie, Cookie, Cookie. And that was it. And I was like, what just happened? This is weird. Great dude though, love that guy. And he we gave him the name Chewy from his last name, and but he met another Chewy who got her name from chewing tobacco. And I said tobacco, not tobacco,
right, of course,
because I'm from the South. But she would dip in class and spit into her little cup. So he saw her and he's like, I am never going to have Chewy as my call sign again. And so he wouldn't answer to it. And he would get a little emotional about that. So Chewy went away. I don't know what they...
He successfully was able to repel that nickname. Huh?
I never really tried. I mean... it's Cookie as in Cookie. Mm-hmm. I told people that, it's because I'm so sweet, but I mean, grown man being called Cookie is weird. But
it can be always a lot worse. Like you could be Gravedigger or Digger for short.
Yeah.
Which was one of our earlier guests.
Yes.
Or, well, there's a lot of other ones that people tried to give me. And I'm like, no, I already got a call sign, thanks. So, be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Right?
It can always be worse.
Better the devil you know.
Always be worse. So, I mean, this really bad to the bone combat controller, his nickname was Mouse, right? His call sign was Mouse. So, I could live with Cookie.
I mean, ironic code names and nicknames they're often funny.
Yes. Or have a funny origin anyway.
Fair enough.
Yes, that's true. Like even the coolest call signs that we have in the Air Force are probably because of a mistake. And they're trying to keep you humble and remember that mistake, because aviation will humble you quickly if you do not respect it.
I could see that.
So everything we do, you need to, and that obviously is across the board in the DoD. So much we do is so dangerous. We just do it every day, and we don't even think about so much the danger, because it's ingrained in us.
Yeah, it's
safety.
inherent with the job.
Yeah.
It's that compartmentalization.
Yeah.
Your brain has to be able to put things in certain boxes.
Yeah.
Keep them from touching.
And we do it seamlessly and really fast. Most of us slowest moves fast, and you learn it slow, so you can go faster and faster and faster. But when you're learning it slow, you're learning all of that safety stuff, and just always have the muzzle down range. Don't point it at your buddy.
Yes, that is good.
Crazy, right?
The infantryman agrees. Yes, that's good. Okay, so back to Pope. You are a junior field grade at this point. You are in a leadership role.
Yeah.
Okay, you're about to pin in.
Still captain, senior captain.
But you're in a leadership role now.
Yeah.
So this is kind of your first real foray into leadership. So talk about that.
So, it's kind of interesting how we develop, and I think there's a healthy tension, and there needs to be a healthy tension between the ranks and as you go up. So, I don't think that, I tell people you shouldn't ever be a yes man or a yes woman. You need to be a yes sir man or a yes ma'am man or woman. And the difference is you tell your leaders what you actually think behind closed doors, and you give them honesty. Remember, integrity first, right? You got to give them your feedback. You might be wrong, and they will correct you to 100%. Most good leaders will correct their subordinates to 100%. But you owe them your feedback. That's why you're there. You're not just a robot. You should give them your feedback. But when that door opens and you walk out that door, you guys need to be lockstep with your leader. And so I kind of learned that early and wanted to do that. But not everybody at every level appreciates honest feedback.
Yeah.
And even if you're doing it behind closed doors. So we had one airman who... they gave me all the really troubled airmen.
The Island of Misfit Toys.
I was more senior captain, and so I got a lot of the, like, oh my goodness. And we had this one guy that he just couldn't get out of his way. He was just really making some major screw-up decisions. And so, with those individuals,
Before we get too far into that,
Yeah.
making bad decisions in his professional life or his personal life, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I am more of, and this is probably my worst characteristic. I am more of, you see somebody, you save them. I think everybody inside them can be a winner, and they can make good decisions, and they can change their life, and they've got to want to do it though.
Yeah.
But I'm the guy that's like, no, we got to help them, even when they don't want help.
So you're going to make the horse drink, whether he wants to or not.
Yeah, you're going to lead him to water, and then you're going to push him in. And you will drink, and then as you're drowning, I'm going to pull you out. So, which is not really the best. They've got to meet you, and it's not halfway. They don't have to meet you halfway, but they've got to, do that. I'm one of those, I don't know if it's a hopeless romantic, which doesn't sound right, but
in a group of three men?
I'm a
No,
believer. I'm a believer that people, there's some good in them, in all of us, and that, we can salvage people, we can change them, they can turn around, the greatest stories are the human triumph of just beating addiction, coming around and having a job,
the potential exists in everyone. It's just whether they make something out of that potential.
And I think good leaders pull that potential out
Yeah.
and inspire people to be the best version of themselves. And some people, they say that and they're like, yeah, we're all doing that. But over the years, I think some people waver in their commitment to that. You might always believe it, but how much do you believe it? To where does it keep you up at night? Does your performance and what you're putting out and how you're building the team actually concern you, or is it just I'm in the moment right now, so I care about you? Do you really care? And it's tough. I mean, I'm not pointing fingers at people. It's just my personality. I'm more of a AB personality, not a true type A personality. So I'm more of we can save people. So this individual, he was screwing up personally and professionally. But there were a lot, as there always are, there were a lot of factors in there. And if you look at the holistic, what was going on, you could see, some things that were leading him down the wrong road. And he had a young child that had appointments up in Raleigh, which, was like an hour away. And his son, I think he was like 2 years old, was trying to walk, and he had a condition where his legs didn't work right. But in Raleigh, they had braces for him and stuff like that. And if he went to the physical therapy appointments, there was a good chance that he could walk again, or walk ever. And so, but that didn't give it my airman the excuse to do the things that he was doing, and how he wasn't really showing up at work, and making poor choices in his personal life. And I had one DO. Sounds like I'm bashing DOs. I had a lot of great DOs, by the way. But I had
Is that a deputy?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, second in command in the squadron. So director of operations.
Director. Got it.
Yeah. So they were like, he had a thick Southern accent. He's a really good dude, but he just, in his mindset, he was like, we got to get this guy out of the Air Force. And I remember his Southern accent. He was like, and this is one like the first time I met him, and they were putting me, and they were like, "You're going to be a flight commander. We're giving you the trouble kids and stuff like that." And he's like, "We're going to make him a Mr. below the zone." And I was like, "Good to meet you. Hi." So, and I'm thinking, this guy's, going through a divorce, getting remarried, has a kid, and I'm just picking up, just a little bit of the things that are in his life, and I'm like, this is a human being, this is his paycheck, we can't just kick him out even if he's making bad decisions. He hasn't killed anybody, we're not talking about legal issues where he's going to jail. We're just talking about the core values that he's not living by, kind of thing. So can we get him back to good and make him a part of the squadron, or at least help the squadron? Because we were deploying a lot. We were like 3.5 months back, and then 4.5 months on the road, because there was a 2-week overlap. So we would spend 4 months flying, and then we would move out like the last week or 2 weeks, and then there would be like an overlap. And so when we finally got back, it was like you weren't back a full 4 months. You were only back like 3.5 months. Plus, you'd have to get all your training done and everything. So it was a heavy weight on all of the airmen. And if we're not all pushing on the same side of the rock, then we're getting into problems, and some people are going to be working really, really hard, and other people, if they're not pulling their weight. So I was like, man, this is a guy that needs to pull their weight and pull his weight, and he can deploy, and just like us, and maybe we don't want him to fly because he put almost zero effort into being a good navigator. And so I'm like, I don't want him even around the aircraft, but maybe he can do a desk job. Maybe he can do tactics or something like that. And they were like, well, if you don't trust him in the aircraft, why would you trust him with tactics, And I'm like, well, he's going to be under an 04 who's going to make him do his work, basically, which it gives the guy that's busting his butt a little bit of a break if he doesn't have to deploy again. And this dude can actually take a deployment. So I'm thinking bigger picture, big team. And then this guy, we had a mandatory PT at the squadron, and he doesn't show up. And immediately the DO comes. He's now
a target, right?
He's been a target, but this is piling up.
Yep.
And I'm like, the DO comes to me and goes, Cookie, where is he? And I'm like, I don't know, sir. Let me check with the scheduler. Because we have schedulers who basically schedule everybody for it, part of the DO team. And the scheduler goes, no, he called me yesterday and told me that he had an appointment in Raleigh with his son. And I'm like, well, that sounds legit, missing.
There's a precedent for that.
Yeah, missing, a PT session, to go take his son to an appointment, in Raleigh. Okay, I think that's legitimate. The DO wasn't having it. He's like, nope, you will write him up. And I'm like, for what, sir? For taking care of his son? I mean, I know we're trying to get this guy to be a Mr. below the zone, but I have a problem with that. And this isn't the right move. And this is behind closed doors. With one other flight commander, which he was a good dude too. And I mean, they were both good dudes trying to do the right thing. And he's like, all right, Cookie, we're not going to write him up this time. But if he screws up again, I'm writing you up. And I'm like, ouch.
Okay.
So
it's a technique, I suppose.
Yeah. So I actually made sure I deployed with him, and just watching him And this guy was not a good airman. And you have those folks that, I think they're definitely the exception to the rule. I think most people that are serving in the military are pretty amazing. If they raise the right hand, they're my friend. I'm sorry. Yeah, people just don't understand, I don't think, that haven't served or haven't served as long as some of us.
Yeah.
That, you get to almost 30 years and you're like, man, right away, if you raise your right hand to serve a cause bigger than yourself, you're one of my friends. I mean, bottom line, I don't know you, I've never met you, but if you're wearing the American flag on your shoulder and you've served, and hey, you served your community, you served as a first responder, people that will do that will sacrifice themselves for others, man, they get, they don't get a hard pass on everything, but they get a lot of leeway with me, if they've done that.
Yeah. I
don't care if they're a complete jerk. I'm sure there's complete jerks out there that wear the flag, but I don't know. I think they're special people that do that. So I was like, I'm not giving up on this guy. And sure enough, in the desert, he was a tactics guy, and he was doing okay, and I was keeping up on him. And one time I saw him walking out of work, and he had the desert flight suit on. It was zipped down all the way to his belly button. I chewed his butt. I was like,
does he know that you're on the hook for him now?
No,
Okay.
I would not do that.
Okay.
But what I was doing was what I thought was being a good leader and being there for my folks. I'm sure I could have handled it better. And the guy, the DO, he went on to be a group commander, 06, and he's a really good guy. I mean, he did it the right way. He was always the airman that was, not getting in trouble, making right decisions and stuff like that. But there's some folks that just, they learn by making mistakes. They can't learn from others' mistakes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the airman that I was trying to develop was definitely
Below the zone.
But yeah, in a bad way. But yeah, he was not a good airman. But I wasn't willing to just try to kick him out to make things up. Like, I'm not gonna lie on somebody to get them kicked out. So he was going to screw up, and I find this to be true, that people are going to screw up enough to give you enough ammunition if they need to find another career, as you said. You can help them do that. And it was interesting as I was moving up that a lot of people would say, not a lot of people, but some of my mentors that I really appreciated would say, they're your airmen even after they become a Mr. You got to make sure, because when you deal with mental health and stuff like that transition, whether you've done it the right way and you're just doing it honorable or are retiring, that's still a hard transition. So you're watching them, you're a leader all the way through their transition, and you should be checking up on them, because it's crazy. I heard that veterans, it's even more than 22 suicides a day now.
Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes, it's more.
And I'm like, and that's a big thing for me, because I wrote an article, and I think I shared it with you. That's the leadership piece that sometimes we're missing. We say all the right things. It's not about me or whatever, but there's things that we won't share because we're intimidated or we're scared. And writing an article about my own mental health was really, really important. That was during a time where suicides had ticked up. And I know we're skipping a lot of years. I apologize. But
this is important.
When I was a group commander, I wrote that article, how believing a lie almost killed me. I was young, we were poor, and, I just thought I was a mistake. And I thought that, the world would be better off without me, that my family would be better off without me. And, I attempted to take my life at an early age. And, the thing that saved me was thinking about my little brother, because he was probably, I don't know, I'm sure it was a God thing, that in my mind, before it actually happened, I saw my little brother fine in my body, and I was like, and I dropped the knife, and I was like, wow. And then my faith in God started healing me, like emotionally, mentally, and then I never shared that, though. Never told anybody about that, and I think I was just really embarrassed. And there's a power, and I saw so many great senior enlisted leaders and generals come out and go, look, my mental health is important, and this is I don't know if anybody ever went as far as I did and kind of shared one of those stories, but I think those are the things that make us more relatable to our folks, to say, okay, look, I know you're going through a lot, and we're just not, we need to connect here, but we still have this huge job to do, but I'm really on your side, and I'm thinking about that to holistically take care of the person. It's got to matter. You got to feel it, and I think sometimes as military members, we don't want to feel it. We just want to do it. Yeah. Mission. So, yeah.
Which, that kind of mindset, and I know this because this has been my experience, is as long as you're charging forward and focusing on that mission, you don't take the time to really come to terms with a lot of that. In my case, PTSD and all the associated wonderful little umbrella that covers that. As long as you're charging, you don't ever have to turn and face any of that. And then there will be a day where things slow down, and everything that you've been running from will catch up to you.
That's absolutely true.
Keep the mind in shock and the body moving, but you can only do that for so long.
Yeah. And I think you really, as a senior enlisted leader or as an officer, you're doing that to a degree, because you're not allowed to have a bad day, right? You're supposed to always have that smile,
which is stress,
right? Which is but it's such an honor to be able to lead in the military, and so it's something that I absolutely would do over, But you're right. It started. There's chinks in the armor, and it started really manifesting itself in Afghanistan for me. Because, I tried to keep good mental health, but I wasn't doing a good job of it. And I was letting stress from home and stress from the job really get in, and never taking care of it, never taking care of myself, and just trying to take care of others. And it's true, the old adage that if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others. Yep. And my fitness, even though I looked fit, was not very good, and I wasn't sleeping. And I did 2 tours, because I did an AFPAC hand tour, so Afghanistan, Pakistan hands. It was a DoD program where they would take officers and senior enlisted, and they'd teach us a little bit of either Pashto or Dari or Urdu, and send us to either Afghanistan or Pakistan. And I did 2 years in Afghanistan back to back, which in a way was kind of cool, because I got to grow a beard. But doing 2 years away from your family, and then training in between. I came back, but training in between, and I did 10 months straight in Afghanistan. I never came back until after that. But what you go through getting ready to go, like I had an Army 1-star pull us in. I didn't even know that there were basements in the Pentagon, but we went to the Pentagon, and there's several levels there. I was like, wow, well, that's crazy.
That's where they keep the aliens.
All the stories are true. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. And so we're in this briefing room in the bowels of the Pentagon. This 1-star Army dude came in. He was a really sharp guy, physically fit, and he's like, I love my Afghan partner. years. I've been to Afghanistan several times. But if you don't think I'm ready to pull my gun and shoot them, you're wrong. And I was like, he's like, the stories are real. We've got people getting beheaded.
Yeah.
And we have people dying, and you've got to be ready. And then they started training us, I call it Jason Bourne training, with that, getting off the X, and people are there, and you've got to always be on. And I mean, we had the NACA 9 happen where 9 people got killed by their Afghan partners.
You're talking about green on blue. Okay, can you explain to everybody what we know, but what green on blue is and what the context?
Yeah, so the people you're training might be people that are Taliban or terrorists that are infiltrating, or more likely, they've got loved ones like we all do.
They're being blackmailed.
That the Taliban have kidnapped their daughter, their 4-year-old daughter, and said, look, if you don't take out your U.S. advisor, we're going to do some really bad things to your daughter.
Yeah, which is more common.
And then we'll kill her.
Yeah. And so think about it. As a dad, you're like, I will do anything to protect my daughter. So you might love this advisor. Like, they might be like, in a lot of our Afghan partners were just that close. Like, we were just really good friends. And but when your family is being threatened and they actually have them, they've been kidnapped, and they say if you say anything to them, they're dead. If you don't do everything we say that we're telling you to do, they're dead. So do it, and you're probably going to die, but your family will live. And it's a different mindset anyways in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And so, you were always, and what the one star was trying to drive home, he wasn't trying to be mean or anything. He was just trying to say, you've got to be ready. You've got to always have that switch on. And that's what they teach you in training, in air advisor training. They teach you to always have the switch on, and which you're always checking your exits. You're always looking at, you're looking at the world differently, which causes stress.
And you never really turn it off.
And you never really turn it off.
Even when you're done.
Yeah. And you just, there's some cool parts of the training, though. I got to learn how to drive a Tahoe at 95 miles an hour and do all these really cool things. And
that was it a right-hand drive?
It was not.
Okay.
It was not, but I learned how to do J-turns. And so, I try to keep my skills up by doing a rental car no, I'm just kidding.
He gets a right-hand drive Hilux and just
takes it down to the school parking lot on
donuts
weekends.
down to Pope Army Airfield and just does donuts.
Doing donuts, J-turns. But no, a lot of cool things, but very dangerous times. And going into that mindset that I didn't understand was, I really didn't expect to come back to my wife and kids. I expected to do the AFPAC hands and be in heaven. I was not coming back.
Yeah, I understand that.
And, that does stuff to you. And, I never told my family that.
No.
Told them there's risk and stuff like that. But, we'd been through deployments before, because in the 130 world, gone, for 4.5 months, and then back for like 3.5 months and back again. And I had short tours before I even got into the AFPAC hands program. And so, we weren't new to this, but these were the longest deployments we had, in probably the most dangerous deployments, because when we were flying over the threat, we weren't really worried about getting shot down. Yeah. They were successful with a few, but it was not, while it was pretty dangerous flying, they weren't near peer, shooting us down kind of thing. So they were doing rockets, and on NVGs you can see, tracer fire, and you can see the rockets fly by, but they're a little bit of ways. They're like, yeah, you missed us.
Pot shots. Yeah.
Pot shot. But, in Afghanistan, boots on the ground, taking cars out in Kabul and in other places, and helicopters to the different provinces. And then my second tour, I was actually a squadron commander flying with it as an air advisor, the C-130, and flying in the C-208 and stuff like that. So, all the Afghan had to do is push over, and we would have been dead. Thankfully, all the Afghans we worked with were, pretty squared away, and green on blue is rare too. When you think about all of the engagements, the thousands and thousands and thousands of engagement, and I don't say that to
I've lost a few friends,
diminish the people that we've lost with it, because it is a real threat, and that's why the general was warning us, and he wanted us to be real about that. Guardian angel training, watching over the people that are in the you've got to be ready. The switch has got to be on. And if the switch was on, for some of our folks, at least the training says that they might have come back. But you let your guard down, just like right now. My guard's down, right? But, in Afghanistan, that can be a deadly proposition.
Right.
Okay, so that hypervigilance led to some mental health issues,
or maybe added to.
Added to is probably a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So, how long was it before you really started to address it seriously?
I think so. Typical military folks, we don't say we have a problem,
Of course.
and we do that because the culture is the way where we want to get after the mission, and when we say we have a problem, then the mission stops for us, right? And we have to do medical appointments and stuff like that.
Nobody wants to be a part of the problem. They want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, and for flyers, it's even more so because nobody wants to be deniffed. Nobody wants to be out of the aircraft. So, going and telling a flight doc everything that's going on is not something we do. And mental health is definitely not. So just earlier this year is the first time I sat down with a mental health professional and told him everything that I was going through. Like claustrophobia. I don't even like being in, not bagging on your studio here. But
our state-of-the-art media center.
Your state-of-the-art media center. But, this is something that I have to deal with mentally. And, I felt like I was in a really good place, especially after my suicide attempt. And, I felt like I was healed. Like I was in a really good mental state. But I found out once you get so close to the edge and you look over, you never forget that view.
Yeah.
And I remember in group command, we have these things called DOXs, which are basically surveys that your people can do on you.
Yeah, command climate surveys.
Command climate surveys is what we call it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I poured my heart and soul out in my commands, like just left it all on the field. And I thought I was doing a really good job, being personable and also getting after the mission. And the way the group was set up, it wasn't the entire group that was surveying me. It was only the leaders. So my squadron commanders, I had 5 squadrons and 5 senior enlisted leaders and commanders and DOs. So about 15 to 20 people, a really close-knit group. And I thought we were pretty good because we were actually crushing the mission. And we were getting after those things. Because I sat down with every squadron commander and said, what do you want to get in your command? And they told me, and I took copious notes, and I was like, all right, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. Come to find out that they didn't, really want that. Like, that wasn't the priority,
They felt like they had to say that kind of thing.
Yeah. And which I understand that, I've been in their shoes before as a squadron commander and wanting to please your boss and stuff like that. But I was just trying to have an open conversation and go, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to be behind you 100%. But make sure you tell me the things you really want. And I went to the mat to get this one thing over. Like I had to work with another wing, another group, because they owned the facility and stuff like that. But come to find out, I pushed too hard. And we got what we needed. We got what we wanted.
Yeah.
We were able to build this amazing thing. It was a big win for our wing. It was a big win for the squadron. But in my uber aggressiveness to get this thing done for this person, I kind of fractured the relationship unknowingly. I really wasn't trying to. I was just trying to help. So I got this Deox back, and I love dad jokes. So I tell dad jokes in every group meeting and stuff like that. Some people just hate dad jokes. And that came out on the survey, like, but they put it in a way like, all right, these are anonymous surveys, so there's no accountability. Like, Colonel Cook tells some really inappropriate jokes. Inappropriate. And I'm like, I will only tell dad jokes. I mean, I'm not wired to tell inappropriate jokes. They make me squirm, so why would I, so not that I walk on water or anything like that. I definitely have my faults, but I definitely don't, cross that line. I tell dad jokes, which some people might think are inappropriate. But, and just a couple things that people said, and I was devastated.
Yeah.
Like, I was devastated. I was like, look, man, I gave my heart and soul. I'm actually sacrificing time with my family to be a really good group commander and do everything I can to make you guys better. But I was really failing at both, and not failing in the sense of we weren't getting things done. I was doing things that were nefarious or anything like that, but failing in my sense because I wanted to get a grand slam. I didn't want to just have bases loaded or a home run. I wanted it all. And and I think most military members, that's kind of what they develop in us. They develop that, hey, highly professional, we're getting after it, we're thinking about it. Even when we're not on the mission, we're thinking about how to get better and be that much better. But yeah, it was taking a toll, and my mind flipped right back to, and this was after Afghanistan, but my mind flipped right back to, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm just a mistake, and I'm obviously clearly not leading my people properly and getting after the mission properly. I'm screwing this up. And it was back to looking over the edge.
Yeah.
And going,
we've been here before.
I've been there before, and I'm kind of feeling the same emotions. I couldn't sleep at all for 3 days. And I was just, and it wasn't like the whole Deox was bad, but just those few little things, and knowing the group of people that did the comments were the people that I spent the most time with and that knew my heart, I thought.
I mean, did it feel like a betrayal in a way?
In a way, it was, for me, it felt like a big betrayal. And it was funny because one of our squadrons had a really bad Deox, and I supported them. I was like, look, I know that's not who you are. I know that's one or two people trying to make this Deox say something that your performance, and it was against the SEL for that squadron and the commander, who are amazing people and were doing really good stuff. So I supported them, but I didn't say, I didn't, you want it to stick, but you don't want it to disrupt,
be debilitating,
and be debilitating.
Yeah.
That's said it a lot better than I could, but so I was like, I got you guys' back. You guys are fine. You guys are doing, and they both, went out and up. But, and then I felt like I was, in this desert all alone, and, it it just seemed bring back all those memories of not being good enough. And even after 20 plus years of serving the military and doing some really amazing things with some amazing people and getting things done, I felt like a failure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what catastrophizing does, right?
Yeah.
It's taking something serious, but not critically serious, and taking it to the worst possible extent.
Obsessing.
Yeah. And it just spiraling downward to the lowest possible point.
Yeah. There's another thing about leadership that the proverbial they never,
Those people.
They never really train you for or develop you on how to deal with how lonely leadership can be
At the time.
and it won't always be that way, but how isolating it can be. They never really train you for that.
Yeah. And what we eventually did was I rallied my two closest folks, my director of operation, or my deputy, and my senior enlisted leader, my chief, Chief Corey. He's an amazing dude. Happily retired down in Florida right now. But and I said, look, our folks are trying to tell us something. Let's take out the emotion. Let's take out the jabs.
Take a deep breath.
And take a deep breath, and let's get after, and let's change immediately, not tomorrow, today. And one of the things that the senior enlisted leaders were saying and the DOs were saying was, Colonel Cook never involves us in leadership decisions. Well, I was emailing the squadron commanders so the squadron commanders could involve the DOs and SELs in leadership decisions. I changed that day. Now all of my communication, which was probably every day I was communicating with the squadron, I always CC'd the DO and the SEL. Before that, it was a blind spot. I was like, no, let me let the squadron commander do that.
You don't want to circumvent them.
Yeah, I felt like I was giving leadership back to the squadron commander, and that's a fine line, right? Because and it's an interesting game you play because you want to give them enough information, but you don't want to give too much of your thoughts on how they should solve this,
right?
Because you're developing them. But still give them the information, so kind of unbiased news source. We need more of those. So I tried to be an unbiased news source from that point on, like, hey, here's the opportunities we have here. These are the things we need to get after. And so the DO and SELs were on all of them. My deputy and my chief was, from then on, was on all of them. And then, so I tried to make it into a learning situation, but it was so hard. I mean, I was in the pit for a little while, but it was so hard. But climbing out of the pit was, it felt really good to have a solution, use this information, no matter how hard it is to take, for something that was good. And then we rallied in San Antonio, took all my commanders and DOs and SELs that could come, and we went down to San Antonio and we got some leadership briefs. We checked our records and stuff like that. I just wanted to give an offsite, a real offsite, and get after some things that we needed to do in our group and talk about the DEOCs and talk about what we were doing immediately and in what direction. Because I think the biggest thing was the disconnection and the miscommunication on my part, not sharing enough with everybody, especially on my leadership team, which created a sense of mistrust, know, and that was all me. I was the commander. I needed to change me and do better. So, but in that situation, I started writing that article about mental health.
Yeah. Did your, the survey, did your deputy and your senior enlisted leader, did they take the results of that, maybe not necessarily as hard as you did, but did they also kind of feel like, what's this? We thought we were doing a good job. Did they take it that way too?
A little bit, but I think with the surveys, a lot of the problems that they were listing were Colonel Cook.
Okay.
But my deputy immediately said, no, the finance piece is me, because you told me to do the finance piece. So I need to be better at this. And my chief, he took some things. He's like, no, that's me. I need to deal with that. I could be better at that. And oh, by the way, as your deputy and as your senior enlisted leader, we should have told you that. We should have told you these things. So it was a really good, honest conversation.
It's a good team.
Exactly. And brilliant people. And you'll find that in the military. I know you guys, your teams were like really good. And when you communicate, it can be, when you honestly communicate, it can be an amazing thing. So they took that from me, and they did not allow me to take it alone. And it was a blessing, because it was a hard time in my life. So
talk about so during that dark period, talk about how your maturity in your faith played a role in, you called it climbing out or crawling out.
Yeah. Well, from the beginning, my belief in Jesus has been the most important thing in my life. So there's been things throughout my childhood and college years and adulthood that, might just stop people. And it's not that I've, been through we live in the best country in the world, and, the poorest in the U.S. are considered pretty well off in some other countries, of course. So I'm not trying to say I've got it worse than anybody else, but some pretty momentous things that have happened that were negative in my life. And, just always not being perfect, but putting Jesus first in my life has been so important. And I would not have made it. I would not be here. I would not be talking to you. I would not have the life I have if Jesus wasn't in the center. So that's the reality. I don't, obviously they tell you not to apostatize in the service, and, you're not. But I think you should be honest with your faith, and you should be able to share just as much as anybody should be able to share, if they're Muslim or agnostic or atheist, and I think we need to be open to do that. So walking through that dark period, I like playing the guitar and singing. Nobody else likes me doing it, so I do it by myself, so I could bang on the guitar and just howl. But it's really good to do those things to kind of get it out, work it out. Yeah. And it's really cool. I was at a service, and I was feeling darkness all around me, and I was in a worship service, and I was just looking up, and I felt like I saw Jesus reaching down, and I just grabbed his hand. And I think that was that's always been, he's always been there for me. And so just being able to know that and have that faith. I don't know how people that don't have him do it. I know
agreed.
People that have gone through worse than me, but I see I think it's Ben Owens. I follow him on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I don't even know the guy.
I don't know him personally, but I know who you're talking about.
Black Rifle, not the coffee company, in Flanders Field. He does such amazing things. But 5 years ago, he was like an addict.
Yep.
I think he was a Marine, prior service Marine guy, and now he's doing such amazing things, and he just, he's as raw as you want to. He probably couldn't come on here because you got that no cussing rule. Or
we have invited him on the show, by the way.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm just kidding. You should come.
We'll see.
But Dan would probably be doing a lot of editing.
Finger over the button.
Beep beep beep. But the heart of that man, the genuineness in what he does on the daily for others.
And for kids.
I learned early in my life that the more you give, the more you get. And people don't understand that. And it's a biblical truth that when you give and you help others, you get more help. And I started helping kids when I was a teenager with this ministry in my church for kids going through a divorce. so their parents are going through a divorce and their world is split, right? At that age, in their mindset, it's like, oh, Mom, Dad, is it my fault? Did I do this? What happened? And they go, and I had already worked through a lot of that stuff. I already thought I was, I'd been rock bottom, and that was part of my healing, was helping other people, from the suicide attempt to, I started helping others. And man, talk about the best drug in the world, and it's probably bad to say it that way, but, there's such a natural high when you get to help people and you see it really affecting their lives. Yeah. You get so much more from that. There's so much chemistry that God's made our bodies, and it's such an amazing thing. And the endorphins that are released, when you help people, is just amazing, and it helps you, and it really centers you on what matters in life. So that was huge for me. And like I said, I don't know how people do it, but that don't have Jesus, but I find that a lot of people that have gone through tragedies and come out much worse than mine, come out on the better end and make it and turn it into something powerful that helps humanity, usually are faith-based. Yeah. At least this is my personal thing. They have a piece of that as faith-based.
Same. Well, let's wind this down. So we're going to ask you our two questions that we go out on.
Sure.
So the first one is, because you're separating now, you're not officially retired yet. Are you ending your career on your own terms?
Yes. Yeah. Thankfully. So I'm
sorry, you're not career. Yeah.
Yeah. I got it. I only made that point. I didn't want to sound self-righteous. It's just because I've never thought of it really as a career.
Of course.
Yeah. So definitely on my own terms, which has been a great blessing. I haven't really thought about myself, or really my family was higher than myself, but it was really the mission. And, people that serve get it and they understand that. But, we weren't, PCS orders are orders. They're not suggestions. We were moving to places that we didn't pick. We had like 18 moves in, the 28 years. So that's a lot of moves. And, that the majority of that was on my wife and kids.
Yeah.
Because I was always plugged into the mission or the next job and, preparing. I was there and I was doing things, but, as soon as I went TDY, it was all on her. Mm-hmm. And so this has been pleasantly surprising that, at the point in my career as the Inspector General in PACAF, I was working directly for a 4-star. They don't usually just say, okay, yeah, here's this nice transition for you. But this has been an amazing thing to just pump the brakes a little bit and just breathe and go, wow, what do I need to do next? Like I said earlier, connecting to a new mission that is powerful, that, and I think it's somewhere with still helping in the civilian community with maybe defense contracting or something, so I can help the mission, but also doing stuff like this to reach out to veterans and say, you're not alone. We've all been through it. Some people have been much worse than me, and then other people maybe not as much, but we're all here together. And I love that from the veteran community. I'm doing an internship with SAIC right now. Those guys are amazing, really good. So I can't tell you what SAIC actually stands for. It's scientific something, but it's a Fortune 500 company. I can pull out my phone and Google it real quick. Most people just call it SAIC.
If Dan put our guests on the spot. Thanks, Dan.
It's an interesting name, and I used to could say it, but now I'm not. Sorry.
But it's like R&D.
It is definitely a defense contractor, most of what they do, but over 20,000 people in the company. The new CEO, she's amazing, great leader. I have a great mentor that's a retired 06 that's in the company. No job's guaranteed. I'm just an intern from SkillBridge, but I've got a couple other SkillBridge guys that are there, just amazing people too. And just love sitting on it. Everything's virtual, like, nowadays, virtual meetings and stuff like that. And so they sent me a package of these computer screens. So I jump on these virtual meetings all week long, and you learn a lot of stuff. And they give you a little stuff to do here and there, but, they want you to learn. And
Mostly receive mode.
Yeah, and learning what these folks do for our country and fill in the gaps is really, really intriguing to me. And I hope to be a part of that in some form or fashion, but I also want to do stuff like Ben does, to support that. We over the years have supported, a lot of different things like that, but I just want to do more, and be a part of that. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, from your rough childhood, to put it mildly, to working 4 jobs to afford a technical college, to commissioning, and then almost 28 years now in the Air Force. If you could go back, would you do it all again?
Absolutely. I'd do it all over again. And that's hard to say because, quite honestly, I don't know how I got to sit in this seat 28 years later. I did not think I was going to survive. And I was okay with that, to give yourself so fully and be so committed to the mission and serving your country or anything, like I said, first responders, they go out there every day not knowing if they're going to come back or not. And just doing that, being a sheepdog, is not an easy life, but it's so amazing. And 28 years ago, I was not who I am now, and
of course,
I feel like I'm much better. A lot less hair. I used to have this really cool curly hair.
Didn't we all have hair once?
Yeah, and so I'm much uglier, but the things that I was able to see and go through, I was helping kids in Afghanistan in an orphanage. Come on. The military was paying me to go out there and lead airmen on the front line and fly missions over Afghanistan and do some crazy, crazy stuff. And thankfully I survived all that. And there were some things that I did were just absolutely stupid, and a high percentage of death could follow. But by God's grace, I sit here and I would tell you, I would do it over again, over and over and over, because it was righteous and it was the right thing to do. You could talk about politics, and you could talk about why, leaders make decisions, and the pull out of Afghanistan and stuff like that. And I don't want to, muddy the waters or go down that road, but the men and women that are serving in the United States military are amazing people. And they're getting more amazing every day because of the culture that's in there. Now, some people are trying to erode the culture and make it, very political, and we're sometimes ping pong balls that go between, the different, civilian leader of the day, whatever. But for the most part, the culture is very strong in our airmen, soldiers, and Marines, and sailors are pretty amazing. The younger generation are pretty cool. The one thing I would say, though, is if I could do it over, I would spend more time with my family. That was tough. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we can leave it there.
Okay.
Dan, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Cookie, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Pleasure all
much.
mine.
This has been great, and congratulations on a lengthy and successful not career.
Service to our country.
There we go. Thanks
Thank
again.
you. God's grace. God bless.
So, what do you think?
Another fantastic guest.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about the Air Force. I guess I'll lead with the most important stuff, and I really appreciate how vulnerable he was in sharing some things that are very obviously important to him, but things that most people wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable discussing. And I appreciate the candid discussion and the vulnerability. Yeah.
Yes, I do too. He had some very humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine as a child, as a young child, thinking of ending my own life. That's something I cannot fathom.
Yeah.
But he's a man of faith, and his faith saw him through some dark times, not just as a child, but then also dark times as an adult too.
Yeah.
And that should be applauded.
Yeah.
I think, he was working 3 to 4 jobs to be able to afford a technical school. And that kind of drive and work ethic and just desire to be better. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like that sort of thing is missing now.
Yeah.
A lot of people want stuff for free.
Yeah.
And I think if it's free, you do not value it as much. And by busting his hump and doing all that to afford school, but obviously before he got the scholarship, I think that benefited, that work ethic, that drive for self-improvement has definitely benefited him in the long run.
People with a work ethic like that don't fail.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
They don't fail.
Yeah.
It may not end up being the path that they thought they were going to go on.
Yeah.
So in the medium to long term, they don't fail.
Yeah. It was pretty cool that even coming from a family with an extensive military background across the Navy, Air Force, and Army. I don't think he listed any Marines.
I don't believe so.
But he really didn't have any expectations going into the Air Force. Even his own dad was in the Air Force, and yet he still just went in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I guess.
Yeah.
And just took everything in stride. Like, this is what I have to do today. This is the next step that I have to take. This is the next goal I need to meet. And for somebody coming in with little knowledge beforehand, that's probably the best way to go.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you said when you're going through SEER training, that's often what they tell you before, and then once you get there, is don't try to game the school, because I promise you'll have a better training experience if you just take it one training event at a time and not try to game it out, because you're probably going off of either dated or outright false information, and it's going to mess with your brain.
Yeah.
Just take it one day at a time.
Yeah, I get that. We didn't follow the sort of groundwork or path as we have in past episodes, where we kind of go from duty station to duty station, country to country.
Yeah. We're trying something new.
Position to position. But ultimately, this is just about veterans talking to veterans.
Yeah.
And that's what this was. It's just a free-flowing discussion. We kind of jumped back and forth a little bit, though.
We had a lot of really good offline discussions, too.
Yes, we did.
They won't make it into the director's cut. But,
but still.
But what a fantastic gentleman, American officer. Airman.
Yeah.
We don't personally know Cookie Dan.
Yeah.
We just reached out to him on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, would you like to come on the show?" And he agreed.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was just a little bit of persistence on our part, and him being open-minded enough to come to our little circus here in our state-of-the-art multimedia complex here.
Every time that I want, or every time that I am reminded of the 1,000 different ways that social media is awful, one good thing comes out of it, and it's like, ah!
It's like most things in life, particularly technology. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, but he was great, and we can definitely try to find a way to bring him back with maybe some more career focused
sure
questions about specific places that he went and things that he did. But
I'm aware that much of his career, particularly the latter half, is going to be sensitive in what he can and cannot discuss. So
of course,
keeping all that in mind, Dan and I are thinking of ways to bring Tracer Burnout alumni back to the show for something we're kind of thinking through. So if anybody has any ideas on that, please feel free to share.
Yes. One thing I liked that he talked about, he really just mentioned it briefly, but he got back just to see what it was like. He went to the back of the plane and rode where all of the guys like you and me would be when he was flying those.
It was a C-141.
Flying those operations. And while he said he didn't throw up, he did say that he had a new appreciation for what the people in the back go through.
Well, I mentioned it a little bit on the show, but as an old paratrooper, I appreciated that on a certain level.
Yeah.
And yes, when those paratroop doors fly open, sometimes by fly open I mean the loadmaster opens them. That can be, it's literally a breath of fresh air. Literally.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bulk of my jumps were C-130s and C-17s. So I think I did a C-141 very early in my career, but most of that was before my time. It can be so hot back there, and then not to be too gross, but if somebody ever hurls, it will usually cause a chain reaction. You'll never have just one guy toss his cookies. It'll be one, and then the guy next to him. And I've seen it where you're standing down at the end and you're just watching it like a wave coming towards you.
Toss his cookies. I see what you did there.
Yeah. Very, very clever on my part. So anyway, it's kind of nice to see an Air Force guy come back, hang out with the grunts a little bit.
Yeah, that was. He just mentioned it in passing, and I thought that was pretty nice. He didn't say that he ever did it again, but
one and done.
One was enough, eh, Cookie?
So we will find a way to get Dan Cookie back on the show. We have 2 Dans, which is too many as far as I'm concerned. But so thank you for that. All right.
Well,
do you have any parting shots on our guest?
I do not, and if you do not either, then that means you owe me a free fire question.
I do, and the lawnmowers that are running outside the house right now, which I'm sure the microphones are picking up. Let's just tell the audience that those are helicopters.
Well, we kind of ruined that already.
I know. Okay, free fire area. It is October 14th, the year of our Lord, 2024.
CE.
No CE. Absolutely not. So it is the beginning of fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my free fire topic is a short statement, not a question. Pumpkin spice. Go.
What Roger is trying to do is bait me into going off like the old drill sergeant I am, knowing that this is a sensitive issue for me, in that pumpkin spice is a ridiculous concept, and all those of you who enjoy it, whether briefly for the first week of fall, or those of you who enjoy it year round, have lost your minds. seek immediate mental health expertise and drive on. And that's knocking on the door.
It is. Daniel, we were filming the Free Fire area. We are tackling the big questions of our time.
Mm-hmm. As we always do.
And our second guest arrived and was knocking on the door, so we had to cut that particular take, cut it short. So we're going to pick back up. We were in the Free Fire area, and it was an open-ended statement, more of a question, which was pumpkin spice. And you were going on a rant, a wild-eyed rant about how people who like pumpkin spice are terrible people. Please continue.
Okay. Now, I have since we stopped filming.
You've come down off the ledge.
I've had time to gather my thoughts a bit. I should not say terrible people. They are woefully misguided. They have an absurd difficulty in their flavor palette that should be corrected. I don't know if it's surgically possible, but the takeover of everything once October 1st hits.
Oh no, it's earlier than it creeps into August now.
Oh goodness gracious. The pumpkin spice mafia has infiltrated nearly every aspect of existence, be it from candles to workout protein, coffee, cake,
scented candles.
I did say candles. Milkshakes. It is not going to be long before there is a pumpkin spice pizza. I wouldn't be surprised if there's already one.
I can't believe you just said that.
Is there one?
No, I'm saying that now that you spoke it into existence.
Well, it's your fault for perpetuating this idiocy. I understand that everyone has different tastes and different things they find enjoyable, and they get some sort of happiness or satisfaction from, that's you know
some serious throat clearing.
You know what? That is absolutely fine. That is absolutely fine. The pumpkin spice madness has gone too far. It has gone too far. Everyone needs to do some serious self-reflection.
Soul searching.
Some serious soul searching. And honestly, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, but so many of you need to drop to your knees and beg Jesus for help, because it's too much. Just too far.
I think
pumpkin spice whey protein.
I think what Dan's saying is
whey protein.
Please light a pumpkin spice candle and pray to God. Oh man, this is going off the rails quickly. There
are a handful of things that are important to me. And as the days go on, the things that are truly, truly important to me, that list gets shorter and shorter and shorter as you re-examine life. That being said, the things that I absolutely loathe, that list gets longer.
Oh man.
Pumpkin spice is in the top 5.
I can honestly tell you I haven't laughed this hard in a long time. It's probably just the delirium. Because I had too many pumpkin spice.
I hate you so much.
I had too many pumpkin spice margaritas with lunch.
Oh, good God.
Oh man.
Somewhere out there.
This is a professional outfit.
One of our audience members is probably a bartender at a restaurant and is like, ooh, pumpkin spice margaritas. Don't do it. Oh, please, God, don't do it.
Either that or they're grinding their teeth that they just finished brushing with their pumpkin spice toothpaste. So, I am not as nearly draconian on this matter as you. Do I think things have been taken too far by the pumpkin spice Cosa Nostra? Of course I think that. That's absolutely the case. Because we can't have nice things. I am fine with pumpkin spice in the month of October, and it only limited to a few things. I have no problem with pumpkin spice lattes. I might even get one from time to time. Moderation, Daniel.
Moderation in all things.
Yes. My kids might even enjoy the pumpkin spice Cheerios. Yes, that's a thing.
Oh my god. I weep for humanity.
So, moderation, pumpkin spice. I'm fine with it. It doesn't even have pumpkin in it, or at least most of the time it doesn't. It's all basically just cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg and some other spices. Your guess is as good as mine. I am a fall, as in the season, I am a fall partisan. It is my favorite season. Back when I actually liked football, this was a big time for me.
No.
Bring it on. However, in moderation.
What's wrong with hot cocoa? Can't people just have a hot cocoa? Or does it have to be pumpkin spiced hot cocoa now?
No, hot cocoa's great. Cider
Yes.
is great.
Yeah.
There's another thing about cider, though. I think it sneaks up on most people because they think, oh, hot cocoa is chocolate. We should probably stay away from that for the sugar. Instead, we'll take a healthier option and get cider, which is a mistake because there's probably triple the amount of sugar in cider than there is in hot cocoa.
Yes. That is.
I just made that number up just now, but but it's a lot.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, before we close this out, because this is ridiculous, and now I'm going to have pumpkin spice nightmares. We are going to eliminate, in one fell swoop, the entire pumpkin spice mafia. Tomorrow morning, it will all be gone. But 3 things will remain. What 3 things would you allow to remain pumpkin spice from here to eternity? There will be no more. There will be no less. There will be these 3 things pumpkin spiced forever.
I can think of 2 easily. The first one is pumpkin spice coffee, lattes, creamer, whatever. That is totally fair game. That's 1. 2.
So coffee and creamer?
Well, the coffee itself isn't. Well, I think Starbucks does actual pumpkin spice flavored coffee. What we do in my household is just add the creamer as a afterthought.
Is the creamer pumpkin spice?
It is.
Okay, so that's 1.
Okay, so
and then the coffee.
Okay, so then
2.
If those count as 2, that's fine because I only had 2 anyway. So those 2, and then the third thing is that toothpaste sounds amazing. No, I'm just kidding. The third one. And it's not the Cheerios. Okay, we'll go with the candles, the scented candles. That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Everything else
is expunged from existence.
Yes, and we're going to, in a Stalin-esque fashion, we're going to cut it out of history like it never existed.
We're going to Trotskyize it.
Yes.
So just so I'm clear, you don't brew the pumpkin spice coffee and add the pumpkin spice creamer. That's too much. It's one or the other. Okay.
Who are you to say too much? Mr. Pumpkin Spice Cheerios.
Okay.
I can't believe they allow you to have your children.
You think you know somebody and then they say they like pumpkin spice Cheerios. Child Protective Services will be in my house in any moment. Okay. This has officially gone off the rails like most.
It has. And thank you for bearing with us.
Most of our conclusions seem to do this a lot.
It was great having Cookie sit down with us.
Yep.
We appreciate his time. And we appreciate all of your time, and we would really appreciate you liking, subscribing. If you're watching on the YouTube, go ahead and comment. All the little things help.
It really helps.
Help promote us within the algorithmics.
Yeah.
give us a 4 or 5 star review, whatever you feel comfortable with. Leave a review of the show.
It helps drive the show to the top. Please.
Yes. If you haven't, turn on the automatic downloads on your podcatcher, and then you can share it around to friends, family members, whoever you think might enjoy or learn something from these two humble clowns.
They're gonna have pumpkin spice scented, candles at my funeral now.
I won't allow it.
Okay, you love me that much. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it, and don't forget that your service matters.
Fucking Spice Cheerios, dude. You buy that for your kids?
Not often. It is a thing that.
Oh yeah, just between August and February. What the f- is wrong with you?
I am fully comfortable completely throwing my wife under the bus for this.
Have you even asked if they like it?
I hope she feels convicted.